You know what separates the people who actually make something of themselves from those who spend their whole lives wishing? It's not talent. It's not even opportunity. It's something far simpler, yet far more profound. The ones who succeed have learned to keep their mouths shut and their hands busy. They've mastered the art of working while others are talking, building while others are bragging, and becoming while others are just being loud about what they're going to do someday. Let me tell you something I learned the hard way, and I mean the really hard way. When I was younger, I had this habit of announcing every single plan I had. I'd tell anyone who'd listen about the business I was going to start, the books I was going to write, the person I was going to become. I thought that talking about it would somehow make it more real, more likely to happen. You know what happened instead? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because I'd already gotten the satisfaction of people's reactions, their encouragement, their, "Oh, that's wonderful," responses. My brain had already collected its reward, and suddenly the actual work felt less urgent, less necessary. Here's what I've learned over the years, and this is worth writing down. Every word you speak about your plans is energy that could have gone into actually executing those plans. It's like having a tank of fuel and deciding to burn half of it, just warming up the engine while the car sits in the driveway. The truly successful people I've studied, the ones who built empires and changed their lives completely, they had this interesting quality in common. They were quiet, almost eerily quiet about what they were working on. They'd be at the library while everyone else was at the bar talking about their dreams. They'd be taking courses, reading books, making calls, building relationships, and you wouldn't hear a peep about it until suddenly there they were, transformed. I remember this fellow I knew back in the early days. His name was Robert, and he worked at the same factory I did. Nice guy, kept to himself mostly. While the rest of us would sit in the break room complaining about our bosses, talking about the businesses we were going to start, the money we were going to make, Robert would just sit there with a slight smile, eating his lunch, saying nothing. We thought he was boring, to be honest. No ambition, we figured. Then one day, about 2 years into working there, Robert didn't show up. Turns out he'd been taking night classes in accounting, studying every evening after his shift, saving every extra dollar, and building relationships with small business owners in town. He quit that factory job because he just landed a position at an accounting firm with triple the salary. None of us saw it coming because he never said a word. He just did the work. That's when something clicked for me. The dreamers talk, the achievers work. And there's a very good reason for this that goes deeper than you might think. When you talk about what you're going to do, you trigger the same reward centers in your brain that actually accomplishing the thing would trigger. Scientists have studied this. Your brain can't tell the difference between the satisfaction of announcing your goal and the satisfaction of achieving it. So when you tell everyone you're going to write a book, lose 50 pounds, or start a business, your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine, a little pat on the back, and suddenly the actual hard work of doing it feels less appealing. You've already gotten your reward. But here's what happens when you work in silence. Every small victory becomes its own private celebration. Every step forward is fuel for the next step. Nobody's watching, nobody's judging, nobody's offering their unsolicited opinions about why it won't work or how you should do it differently. You're free to fail, adjust, learn, and try again without the weight of everyone's expectations on your shoulders. You're free to be mediocre at first, which is exactly what you need to be before you can become excellent. The world is so noisy now. Everyone's broadcasting every thought, every plan, every minor achievement. Social media has turned life into a performance, and most people are so busy performing that they forget to actually live, to actually build, to actually become. They're trading real progress for the appearance of progress. They're trading genuine achievement for likes and comments from people who won't even remember their post tomorrow. And here's the painful truth. Nobody really cares about your plans. They care about results. They respect what you've done, not what you say you're going to do. When you keep your goals to yourself, something almost magical happens. You create a mystery. People start to notice changes in you, but they can't quite put their finger on what's different. You're showing up differently. You're carrying yourself with more confidence. You're making different choices. And they're curious, they're watching. And then one day when your silent work manifests into visible results, they're amazed. They wonder how you did it. They want to know your secret. And the beautiful irony is that the secret was simply doing the work without announcing it. Let me share something personal with you. The year I decided to completely turn my life around, I told exactly one person, my wife. That's it. I didn't announce it to my friends. I didn't make proclamations at family gatherings. I didn't post about it or talk about it at work. I just started. I started reading books like I'd never read before. I started changing my habits, my routines, my circle of influence. I started investing in myself with a ferocity that surprised even me. And you know what? It was hard. There were days I wanted to quit. But because I hadn't told everyone what I was doing, I didn't have to face the embarrassment of publicly failing. I could adjust my approach without anyone saying, "See, I told you so." I had the freedom to figure it out in private. About 18 months into this silent transformation, I ran into an old colleague. The look on his face was priceless. He barely recognized me. Not because I looked different physically, although I had lost some weight and was dressing better. It was something else. It was the way I carried myself, the way I spoke, the opportunities that were starting to come my way. He asked me what happened, what changed. And I simply said I decided to invest in myself. I didn't give him the whole story because frankly, he hadn't earned it. He hadn't been there in the trenches with me. He hadn't supported the process. Why should he get to understand the journey when all he cared about was the destination? This is what I want you to understand. Your transformation is sacred. Your journey is personal. The work you're doing to better yourself, to build something meaningful, to change your circumstances, that's between you and you. Sure, you might need mentors, coaches, or accountability partners, and that's different. I'm talking about the general announcement, the broadcasting, the need for everyone to know what you're working on. That's ego talking. That's insecurity looking for validation. That's fear wanting reassurance before you've even taken the first real step. The people who talk the most usually do the least. It's a harsh truth, but it's true. They're using conversation as a substitute for action. They're getting their emotional needs met through the telling rather than the doing. And before you think I'm being too hard on people, remember that I was one of those people. I wasted years of my life talking about what I was going to do instead of actually doing it. I confused activity with accomplishment, conversation with creation, and it cost me. It cost me time I can never get back, opportunities that passed me by, and a version of myself that took much longer to emerge than it should have. When you work in silence, you're making a statement without saying a word. You're declaring that your commitment is to the work itself, not to the appearance of working. You're showing respect for the process, understanding that real growth happens in the dark, in the quiet, in the moments nobody sees. Think about a seed planted in soil. All the magic happens underground, in the darkness, in the silence. If you kept digging it up to show people how it's growing, you'd kill it. Your goals and dreams are the same way. They need time in the darkness to develop roots strong enough to support the growth that will eventually break through the surface. Here's something most people never think about. Every successful person you admire, every person who's made something remarkable of themselves, they all had invisible years. Years when nobody was watching. Years when nobody cared. Years when they were working jobs that didn't reflect their dreams, living in places that didn't match their vision, and doing work that nobody applauded. Those years are where everything that matters gets built. Those are the years that determine whether you'll eventually break through or break down. I call them the invisible years, and they're the most important years of your life. They're the years when you're building your foundation in complete obscurity. No cameras, no audience, no recognition, just you and your commitment to becoming someone different than who you are today. And let me tell you, these years will test you like nothing else. Because human beings, we crave recognition. We want people to see our efforts. We want validation that we're on the right track. But the invisible years don't offer that comfort. They demand that you find your motivation from somewhere deeper. You see, character is built in private. Reputation is built in public. Most people get this backwards. They spend all their energy managing their reputation, crafting their image, making sure everyone thinks highly of them. Meanwhile, their character's full of holes. They haven't done the private work of becoming a person of substance. They're all surface, no depth. And eventually that catches up with you. Eventually life will test you in ways that expose who you really are when nobody's watching. The invisible years are your opportunity to become the kind of person who can handle success when it arrives. I studied successful people for years, and I mean really studied them. Not just their public achievements, but their private habits before anyone knew their names. You know what I found? The things they did when nobody was watching were far more impressive than the things they did in the spotlight. There was a businessman I learned about who, before he built his empire, would wake up at 4:30 every morning to read for 2 hours. He did this for 7 years before his business took off. 7 years. Nobody knew about it. Nobody was cheering him on. Nobody was posting about his dedication on social media, because this was before all that existed. He just did it because he knew that leaders are readers, and if he was going to lead a successful company someday, he needed to fill his mind with knowledge. That's the kind of discipline I'm talking about. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that operates on principle rather than praise. And here's what's really interesting. When you develop this kind of discipline in the shadows, it becomes part of who you are. It's not something you do for show. It's not something you can turn on and off. It becomes your character. And character is what carries you through the challenges that success inevitably brings. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Can you stay motivated when there's absolutely no external validation? Can you keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep pushing forward when nobody's noticing, nobody's complimenting you, nobody's even aware that you're trying? Because that's what the invisible years require. That's the price of admission to the life you say you want. Most people can't pay that price. They need the likes, the comments, the encouragement, the recognition. And when they don't get it, they quit. They decide it's not worth it if nobody's watching. But the truly successful people, they've learned to generate their own motivation. They've learned to find satisfaction in the work itself, in the incremental progress, in the person they're becoming through the process. They don't need external validation because they're validating themselves through their daily choices. Every morning they wake up and do what they committed to doing, they're proving to themselves that they're serious. That's worth more than 1,000 compliments from people who aren't even on the same path. Here's what I learned during my own invisible years. You have to become before you can achieve. You have to develop the habits, the mindset, the knowledge, the skills of the person who has what you want before you can actually have those things. You can't skip this step. You can't fake it. You can't shortcut it. The becoming is the whole point. The achievement is just the byproduct. Most people are so focused on the achievement that they never invest in the becoming, and that's why they stay stuck. Think about it this way. If I handed you $1 million business today, right now, could you run it successfully? Could you manage the people, the finances, the decisions, the pressure? If you're honest, probably not. You'd need to become the kind of person who can handle that level of responsibility first. That's what the invisible years are for. They're your training ground. They're where you develop the capacity for the success you're pursuing. I remember when I was working on becoming a speaker, long before anyone paid me a dime to speak. I would practice in front of my mirror. I would record myself and listen back, cringing at every mistake. I would read books on communication, study other speakers, take notes on what worked and what didn't. I did this for months before I ever stood in front of an audience. And you know what? Nobody knew I was doing this. Nobody congratulated me on my dedication. Nobody posted encouraging comments. It was just me and my commitment to becoming excellent at something I believed would matter someday. That's your secret weapon, by the way. The work you do when nobody's watching. The books you read when you could be watching television. The early mornings when everyone else is sleeping. the late night studying when everyone else is out partying, the investments you make in yourself when you could be spending that money on things that would impress other people, all of that is building something inside you that cannot be taken away. It's building competence, confidence, and capability. It's building the foundation for a life that most people only dream about. Now I need to talk about something that might make you uncomfortable. During your invisible years, while you're building in silence, some people are going to think you're wasting your time. They're going to question your choices. They're going to suggest that you're being unrealistic, impractical, or foolish. Family members might express concern. Friends might drift away because you're not available for the same activities anymore. Colleagues might think you're being antisocial. And here's what you need to understand. Their doubt has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. Your commitment to growth makes them uncomfortable because it highlights their own lack of commitment. Your silence about your goals makes them nervous because they're used to people who talk big but do nothing. You're different, and that difference threatens their comfortable narrative about how life works. This is where most people cave. They can handle the hard work, but they can't handle the judgment. They can't handle being misunderstood. They can't handle having people think less of them for a while. So they either quit or they start explaining themselves, defending their choices, trying to get everyone to understand and approve, and that's a trap. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need anyone's approval to work on yourself. The only person who needs to believe in what you're doing is you. Let me tell you about the best revenge you could ever have against doubt, criticism, or people who didn't believe in you. It's not arguing with them. It's not proving them wrong with words. It's massive success achieved quietly. It's becoming so undeniably successful that the results speak louder than any argument you could make. It's showing up one day as a completely transformed person, having achieved things they said were impossible, and doing it all with grace and humility. That's the ultimate response. That's what makes them wonder, how did they do that? During your invisible years, you're also learning one of life's most valuable lessons, how to trust the process, even when you can't see the results yet. This is faith, not in a religious sense necessarily, but in a practical sense. It's believing that the right actions, repeated consistently over time, will produce the right results. It's understanding that growth is often invisible until it's suddenly obvious. You don't see the tree growing day by day, but if you water it, give it sunlight, and protect it from harm, one day you look up and there's this magnificent tree that wasn't there before. Your life works the same way. The daily disciplines, the small improvements, the consistent effort, they seem insignificant in the moment. You read for 30 minutes and you don't feel smarter. You exercise for an hour and you don't look different. You practice your craft for a day and you're not noticeably better. But you do these things for 30 days, 90 days, a year, 3 years, and suddenly you're a different person. Suddenly you have knowledge that others don't. Suddenly you have health and energy that others lack. Suddenly you have skills that others can't match. And it all happened in the invisible years, in the silence, while nobody was watching. The invisible years teach you self-reliance. They teach you that you don't need a crowd to cheer you on. You don't need constant encouragement. You don't need anyone's permission to work on yourself. You just need a decision, a commitment, and the discipline to honor that commitment day after day, especially when it's hard, especially when it's boring, especially when nobody cares. That self-reliance becomes the bedrock of everything you'll build later. There's a difference between secrecy and privacy, and understanding this difference will change how you operate. Secrecy is hiding things because you're ashamed or because you're doing something wrong. Privacy is protecting something valuable while it's still developing. What you're building, what you're working toward, what you're becoming, that deserves privacy. It deserves protection, not because you're ashamed of it, but because it's too important to expose to the harsh elements before it's strong enough to withstand them. Think about a photographer in a dark room developing film. If they open that door and let light in before the process is complete, they ruin everything. The image never develops. It's destroyed by premature exposure. Your goals work the same way. They need time in the dark to develop properly. They need to be protected from the light of other people's opinions, doubts, and projections until they're fully formed and ready to be revealed. When you share your plans too early, you're opening that darkroom door. You're inviting people into a process they haven't earned access to. And here's what happens. They share their opinions. They tell you about their cousin who tried something similar and failed. They point out all the obstacles. They project their own fears and limitations onto your dream. They ask questions you're not ready to answer yet. And even when they mean well, even when they're trying to be helpful, their input can derail you because you're not solid enough yet. You haven't built enough momentum. You haven't developed enough conviction. You're still in the fragile early stages, and other people's energy, positive or negative, can knock you off course. I learned this lesson after making the mistake too many times. I'd get excited about an idea, share it with people I thought would support me, and then spend the next week defending my idea instead of executing it. I'd use all my mental energy, explaining, justifying, convincing, when I should have been using that energy to simply do the work. Every conversation became a debate. Every discussion became a defense. And meanwhile, the actual work wasn't getting done. The idea that seemed so clear and exciting in my mind became muddied and complicated once I let too many voices into it. Here's a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a farmer who planted seeds in his field. Every day his neighbor would come by and ask, "What are you planting? When will it grow? Are you sure you're doing it right?" My uncle planted something similar and it didn't work. Day after day, these questions. The farmer, instead of telling his neighbor the whole plan, would simply smile and say, "I'm trying something new, we'll see how it goes." He didn't elaborate. He didn't defend, he just kept working. And when harvest time came, his field was abundant. His neighbor stood there amazed, wondering how he'd done it. The farmer had protected his process by not explaining it to someone who wasn't doing the work. You need to learn this art. When people ask what you're up to, what you're working on, what your plans are, you don't owe them a detailed explanation. You can be pleasant, you can be friendly, but you can be vague. "I'm working on some personal projects. I'm focused on improving myself right now. I'm exploring some new directions." These answers satisfy curiosity without opening the door to unwanted input. They maintain your privacy without creating secrecy. The beautiful thing about letting results speak instead of words is that results are undeniable. People can argue with your plans. They can poke holes in your ideas. They can tell you why it won't work, but they can't argue with results. When you show up having lost 50 pounds, they can't tell you that your diet won't work. When you show up with a successful business, they can't tell you that your idea wasn't viable. When you show up as a published author, they can't tell you that you're not a real writer. Results silence critics in a way that words never can. And here's what's really powerful. When you achieve something significant in silence, it carries more weight. There's a respect that comes with quiet achievement that loud achievement never gets. Think about it. When someone's constantly posting about their workout routine, talking about their diet, announcing every pound they lose, it diminishes the achievement somehow. But when someone shows up 6 months later completely transformed, having never mentioned they were working on it, that's impressive. That commands respect. That makes people wonder about your discipline, your commitment, your character. This is where strategy comes in. You're not being silent to be mysterious for mystery's sake. You're being strategic. You're conserving your energy. You're protecting your process. You're avoiding the energy vampires who drain your enthusiasm with their doubts. You're staying focused on execution rather than explanation. Every minute you spend talking about what you're going to do is a minute you're not actually doing it. Every ounce of energy you spend defending your plans is energy you're not putting into executing them. Let me be straight with you about something. Some people in your life right now don't want you to succeed. They don't want you to change. They don't want you to grow. Not because they're bad people, but because your growth threatens the dynamic of your relationship. If you've always been the struggling one, the one who needs help, the one who's behind your success, disrupts that. If you've always been the one who goes along with whatever the group wants to do, your discipline and new priorities disrupt that. Your transformation makes them look at their own lack of transformation, and that's uncomfortable. So they'll discourage you. They'll downplay your efforts. They'll predict your failure. And if you're talking about your plans, you're giving them ammunition. You're giving them access to something they'll use against you, even if they don't realize that's what they're doing. This is why silence is protection. It's a boundary. It's you saying, this is too important to subject to your opinion. It's you valuing your dream more than you value their approval. And that takes strength. It takes confidence. It takes a level of self-respect that many people never develop. They need everyone to be on board. They need consensus. They need approval. And because they need those things, they never do anything significant. They never step out. They never risk. They never grow. But you're different. You understand that the path to excellence is often a lonely one. You understand that the crowd is usually wrong. You understand that if everyone thinks your idea is great, it's probably not that innovative. The truly transformative ideas, the truly bold moves, they make people uncomfortable. They challenge conventional thinking. They require a level of belief that others can't muster. So you keep them to yourself. You work on them in private. You let them develop in the darkness. And when they're ready, when you're ready, that's when you reveal them. The art of strategic silence is knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet. It's knowing who deserves to know your plans and who doesn't. It's understanding that your journey is not a group project. It's understanding that while you might need specific help from specific people, you don't need general approval from general people. Most people's opinions don't matter because most people aren't where you want to be. Why would you take directions from someone who's never been where you're trying to go? So what happens when your silent work becomes visible results? What happens when the transformation you've been working on in private finally manifests in public? This is the moment that separates those who understand true success from those who are just chasing recognition. Because how you handle success reveals everything about why you pursued it in the first place. When your results start showing, when people start noticing, when the questions start coming, you have a choice. You can become the person who can't stop talking about how hard they worked, how much they sacrificed, how nobody believed in them. Or you can maintain the same quiet dignity that got you there. The second option, let me tell you, is far more powerful. There's a grace in letting your results speak without adding commentary. There's a strength in being successful without needing to explain how you did it to everyone who asks. I've watched people achieve remarkable things and then diminish those achievements by becoming insufferable about them. They finally get the success they worked for in silence, and then they can't stop broadcasting it. They turn into the very thing they avoided being during their journey, and I understand the temptation. After working in obscurity for so long, there's a desire to make sure everyone knows what you accomplished. But resist that temptation. Stay humble. Stay grounded. Remember that your success is not about proving anything to anyone. It's about becoming who you were capable of becoming. Here's something I learned that changed everything. Success is not a destination where you finally get to relax and tell everyone how great you are. Success is a responsibility. When you achieve something significant, especially when you did it quietly while others doubted, you become an example. People watch you differently. They listen to you differently. They want to understand how you did it. And what you do with that attention matters. You can use it to inspire others to do their own silent work, or you can use it to feed your ego. One creates a legacy. The other creates resentment. The most powerful thing you can do after achieving success in silence is to maintain some level of that silence even afterward. You don't need to share every detail of your journey. You don't need to give everyone the formula. Some things should remain private because they're sacred. Your struggles, your darkest moments, your deepest fears, during the process, those are yours. You can share the principles without sharing everything. You can inspire without exposing. You can encourage without revealing the entire blueprint. What I want you to understand is this. The goal was never to make them wonder how you did it just for the sake of their wonder. The goal was to build something real, to become someone substantial, to create a life worth living. The wonder, the respect, the curiosity from others, that's just a byproduct. It's not the point. The point is that you became the kind of person who can set a goal, work toward it in complete obscurity, handle the loneliness and doubt, stay committed when there was no evidence it was working, and emerge transformed. That's the real victory. That's what matters. So here's my challenge to you, and I mean this with everything in me. Stop talking about what you're going to do. Stop announcing your plans. Stop seeking validation for ideas you haven't executed. Instead, get quiet, get focused, get to work. Invest in yourself like your life depends on it, because it does. Read the books, take the courses, build the skills, change the habits. Do the work that nobody sees. Have the discipline that nobody applauds. Make the sacrifices that nobody knows about. Let your life become your message. Let your transformation speak louder than your words ever could. Let them wonder. Let them be curious. Let them be amazed. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're too busy building something real to worry about what they think. And when they finally see what you've become, when they ask how you did it, smile quietly and say, I just decided to invest in myself. That's all they need to know. The rest is yours to keep. Now go. Work in silence. Let your success make the noise.